From a secretive Ukrainian airbase, two MiG-29 fighter jets roared to life in the early morning of August 20th, 2025. For days, technicians had prepared them for this mission, a mission so risky that even the most seasoned pilots knew the odds of return were slim. This wasn't about showcasing power. It was about precision, a surgical strike on a target buried deep behind enemy lines. Russia's Central Drone Coordination Hub, the brain that guided waves of UAV attacks on Ukrainian cities. If the strike failed, entire towns could face relentless drone bombardments within hours. But if it succeeded, thousands of lives would be saved. The operation hinged on 15 minutes. 15 minutes of perfect timing, split-second decisions, and nerves of steel. Any mistake, and the mission would end in flames. Flying barely 100 meters above the ground, the MiGs used every contour of the terrain to stay invisible: forests, hills, even tree leans. Their payload: French-made ASM Hammer precision-guided bombs, designed to not just damage, but obliterate hardened infrastructure. But between them and the target lay some of the most advanced air defenses Russia could muster. S-400 systems, Buk M3 launchers, and Tor batteries, all battle-tested and deadly. Each radar sweep, each missile battery, each fight in the sky was a threat that could end them instantly. This was not just another mission. This was a flight into fire. At 4:18 a.m., the MiG-29s crossed the invisible line, the outer edge of Russia's air defense umbrella. Instantly, the risk multiplied. Dozens of radars swept the skies in overlapping arcs. Long-range S-400 batteries near Voronezh, medium-range Buk M3 launchers closer to the border, and Tor M2 systems guarding key installations. Each was designed to track and kill aircraft at different ranges, together forming what the Kremlin boasted was an impenetrable shield. But the Ukrainians had anticipated this. The decoy dance. 10 minutes earlier, a lone Bayraktar TB2 drone had taken off from another sector. It was never meant to return. Its task was to climb high and draw the eyes of Russian radar operators, broadcasting its presence like a lighthouse in the night sky. And it worked. Within minutes, Russian search radars locked onto Bayraktar. Operators shouted coordinates, missiles launched, streaking into the heavens to destroy the decoy. Radar screens lit up with what they thought was a real intrusion. For precious moments, Russian attention was fixed above, not below, the low flight. Meanwhile, the MiG-29 streaked low across the treetops, hugging the terrain. Their altimeters read barely 90 meters, a height so dangerous that a single mistake could smash them into the ground, but it kept them beneath most radar sweeps. Forests, ridgelines, even abandoned villages masked their movement. On Russian screens, the Bayraktar blazed like a flare, while the MiGs remained invisible shadows. The close call. As they passed deeper, the first lock warning blared inside the cockpits. A Buk battery had caught a glimpse. The pilots reacted instantly, diving lower, releasing bursts of chaff. Missiles arced into the sky, searching, then exploded harmlessly in the distance. For a few terrifying seconds, it seemed the wall of fire would hold. But then the radars flickered, jammed by Ukrainian electronic warfare units operating from afar. The lock broke. The MiGs pressed on. They had survived the gauntlet. But the hardest part still lay ahead. Enemy fighters had scrambled, and Russian pilots were already vectoring toward them. No sooner had the MiGs cleared the worst of the air defenses than their threat receivers screamed again. This time, it wasn't missiles from the ground. It was fighters. Russian Su-35s, among the deadliest aircraft in the Kremlin's arsenal, had scrambled to intercept. Sleek, fast, bristling with missiles, they outclassed the aging MiG-29s in almost every way on paper. The Ukrainian pilots knew this moment was coming. The mission brief had been blunt. If you meet enemy fighters, your only goal is to survive long enough to reach the target. The predator becomes the prey. At 4:32 a.m., radar confirmed two Su-35s approaching from the northeast. Their missiles had the range to strike before the MiGs could even see them. Warning tones filled the cockpits as the Russians locked on. The first missile streaked toward them, a long white tail cutting through the dawn sky. The lead Ukrainian pilot banked hard left, releasing flares. The missile veered, then exploded harmlessly in the distance. Another lock, another missile. This time the wingman dove low, skimming treetops so closely that branches snapped in his jet slipstream. The missile detonated above, showering fragments but missing its mark. The dogfight that never happened. The Su-35s closed fast, ready to finish the kill with cannons and short-range missiles. But the Ukrainians had no intention of dogfighting. They couldn't win a prolonged engagement. Instead, they relied on speed, terrain, and sheer audacity. Flying at barely 80 meters, the MiGs threaded through valleys and over rivers, forcing the Su-35s to either climb high, where Ukrainian air defense radars could catch them, or risk colliding with the ground. Each second the MiG stayed alive was a second closer to the target, the breakaway. The wingman pulled a maneuver that later analysts called suicidal. He climbed sharply, exposing himself on purpose, lighting up Russian radars like a beacon. Both Su-35s turned to pursue, thinking they had him cornered. At that moment, the lead Ukrainian dove even lower and broke toward the coordinates of the drone command hub. The decoy worked. For precious minutes, the Russians focused on the wingman, chasing him in wide arcs across the sky. He juked, dodged, and dropped countermeasures, burning fuel at a terrifying rate but buying time. By the time the Su-35 pilots realized their mistake, it was too late. The lead MiG was already lining up for the strike. At 4:41 a.m., the lead MiG-29 emerged from the cover of the forest and saw the target, a sprawling complex of hangars, antennas, and command bunkers. This was the nerve center of Russia's drone war, the place from which operators guided swarms of UAVs that terrorized Ukrainian cities night after night. The pilot's breathing slowed. His hands steadied on the controls. At barely 300 meters altitude, he armed his payload. 2 French-made ASM Hammer precision-guided bombs, designed to penetrate reinforced concrete and obliterate hardened targets. The dive. He banked hard, lined up the crosshairs, and released. The bombs dropped cleanly, their guidance fins snapping open. They locked onto coordinates preloaded hours before, GPS corrected, laser refined. Seconds later, the night turned to day. The explosion. The first bomb punched through the roof of the central command hall. A white flash erupted, followed by a fireball that lifted steel beams like paper. Consoles, servers, operators all vanished in the instant blast. The second bomb struck the antenna array, the heart of the communication system. A massive shockwave tore through the compound, toppling radar dishes, shredding cables, and sending debris spiraling into the sky. Windows shattered for kilometers around. Flames leapt higher than the trees, a rolling cloud of smoke and fire marking the end of Russia's drone hub. Secondary explosions followed as fuel generators and stored munitions went up one by one. The escape. The MiG pulled sharply upward, climbing through the smoke as alarm screamed in his cockpit. Russian anti-air batteries opened fire blindly, but too late. The pilot banked hard west, flares trailing behind him, and dove back to low altitude. Behind him, the entire complex burned like a beacon in the pre-dawn sky. Within minutes, the wingman, still dodging the Su-35s, rejoined, both aircraft streaking back toward Ukrainian territory. Their fuel gauges were dangerously low, their nerves frayed, but they had done it. The Russian drone command hub, the brain of their UAV assault, was gone. On the front lines, the destruction of Russia's drone coordination hub was felt immediately. Within hours, Ukrainian air defense reported something extraordinary. The usual nightly swarms of Shahid drones simply never came. Silence spread across cities that for months had braced themselves every evening for the buzzing approach of UAVs. For once, families slept without running to shelters. On the front, Russian artillery lost its eyes as many UAV reconnaissance feeds went dark. Supply convoys moved more slowly, unsure of the situation without drone coverage. In the Kremlin, Moscow reacted with denial. State television barely mentioned the strike, calling it an accident at a communications facility. But satellite images told another story. Burned out hangars, collapsed radar towers, and smoke still rising days later. International observers confirmed the obvious. The strike had decapitated a crucial node in Russia's drone war. Behind closed doors, anger boiled. Commanders demanded to know how two aging MiG-29s had broken through what was supposed to be an impenetrable shield. The psychological shock. For Russian troops, the attack was a blow to morale. If even their most heavily guarded command centers were vulnerable, what was safe? Pilots whispered about Ukrainian daring, while soldiers at the front grew wary of relying on UAV support. The myth of Russian air dominance cracked, and with it, confidence in their own command structure. For Ukrainians, however, the effect was electrifying. News of the strike spread quickly through the ranks. Videos of the burning complex circulated online. For once, soldiers in the trenches and civilians in the cities shared the same sense of victory, proof that David could still strike Goliath. A symbol of innovation. Globally, analysts hailed the operation as a symbol of modern asymmetric warfare. Two Soviet-era fighters, upgraded with Western precision bombs and flown with daring skill, had outwitted Russia's most advanced offenses and obliterated a strategic asset. The lesson was clear. War was no longer about numbers or age of equipment, but about creativity, coordination, and courage. The legacy of the strike. The raid on the drone command hub would be remembered not only for its tactical success, but for its symbolism. It showed that even against overwhelming odds, precision and resolve could bend the course of war. For Ukraine, it was more than just an airstrike. It was a declaration. We can strike where it hurts most, and we will.